Hi, I'm Chris Payne. Welcome to Game Dev London. Today we are chatting to Miggy, aka BitBrain. He's a developer who's working on an RPG using the Godot engine. So I thought it'd be interesting in the wake of the recent Godot Con to have a chat about Godot and its place in the industry and so on. Welcome to Game Dev London, Miggy.
Hey, nice to be here. Yeah.
So do you want to first give us a little bit of a elevator pitch for the RPG that you've been working on?
Okay, so imagine a giant mountain, and in that mountain live a lot of dwarves and goblins and orcs, and you are an explorer, um, losing yourself in that mountain, and you need to find your way out with a pickaxe, maybe with a sword or two. Yeah, it's all in pixel art, top down, and combat inspired by Dark Souls, and yeah, including mining and crafting. So yeah,
It sounds like a reverse Dwarf Fortress.
it kind of is. Imagine Dwarf Fortress, but non-procedural.
Okay, cool. Oh, so it's all handcrafted levels and so forth. Excellent.
Yes.
Fantastic. So well, first off, GodotCon. 3 weeks ago, a whole bunch of Godot devs rocked up to Microsoft HQ in Munich, Germany, to discuss the engine. So, were you there, or were you attending remotely?
Yeah, I was there in person actually. I have been a speaker there, and yeah, I met basically all the faces I usually see on Mastodon or on GitHub. I actually met a lot of these people in person, which yeah was quite exciting to be honest with you. Like I didn't know what to expect, but it was a fantastic conference.
It is great to put faces to people's online handles.
Yeah.
So, what did you discuss? What was the content of that event?
So the basic structure was it was hosted at the Microsoft HQ in Munich, and it was over 2 days on a Saturday and Sunday, and each day consisted of a set of talks and also workshops. And between the sessions, you could like meet other game developers and chat about Godot. And yeah, and there was some very interesting talks, and also some quite interesting workshops that I think have never been done before. So this was like the first time certain things were actually discussed, especially in the given that Godot 4 released this year. So a lot of new things and new frontiers are being discovered right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement about Godot because apart from version 4 coming out, but also because of Unity recently causing a bit of a panic with pricing changes. Motivated a lot of developers to look for an alternative. And I mean, you've described Godot as the blender of game engines, which is pretty good because obviously Godot is open source. Is that why you picked Godot for your game?
It's a good question. So I always came with a mindset of I'd rather build it myself than using a tool. So before I used Godot, I actually coded games in Java. No, you have no fancy game engine. You only have some library you are using. So I tried out Unity before and also Unreal, but I found myself spending a lot of time actually drag and dropping things through some, I would say, not so nice looking UI. At least personally, I didn't like it that much. And also things were a bit slow. So this is why I then went actually back to Java, and just built games with it. But the problem with doing that is obviously compatibility, and you actually have to spend a lot of time doing some quite technical things. And I first tried Godot in 2020, around 3 years ago, and I think I fell instantly in love with it because it's very lightweight. The installation is like 50 megabytes.
Yeah.
You start the engine, it's up and running, no installation, nothing. And I tried the GD script language they're using or they're providing, and I actually was completely mind blown by its simplicity. It's very lightweight, no boilerplate, and yeah, it basically completely convinced me to use it. So yeah, but this was back with Godot 3
Yeah.
still, and yeah.
So that's really interesting. I had a slightly different experience with Godot. I only tried it recently in the wake of the Unity panic, just to see what the fuss was about because people were talking about it. And yeah, I was also impressed at how lightweight it is. Small install, quick install. The editor it boots and closes extremely quickly, which is great. I have had a very cursory potter around. I started trying to build something. I stalled where I found that I couldn't see the scene that was running because I decided to build something procedural. So I wrote a bunch of rules, and then the only way that I could see what I had generated was in the game itself. I could add some tooling in so that I could detach the camera and move it around myself, but it's a little bit of a faff compared to Unity, which allows you to do that as part of the engine. So that put me off using Godot for that particular project. But I did. I tried using C# scripting rather than GD script. Because GD script looks quite a lot like Python, and I'm not a fan of Python.
It's very close to Python. Even the
Yeah.
style guide is referencing the Python style guide.
Yeah. So I tried C# and it works just fine with C#. So yeah, that was nice. Generally, it was a good experience using Godot, but I didn't because of the issue with needing to preview what I was working on. I went back to Unity. I'm afraid, but it did impress me in terms of the speed that you can work in it. It's because it's so lightweight. Whereas other engines do have a tendency to make you wait while they do a lot of thinking.
It actually shows how difficult it is to build a user experience that that gives the user exactly what they need at any given point as fast as possible. So, for example, you needed tooling in the editor.
Yes.
What if I tell you there is a way to do it? You can actually have live preview in the editor without starting your game, but it requires some extra steps, and the editor will not tell you that. You need to read documentation a lot, and there is no easy way to do that other than actually writing code, right?
Well,
so
I did have a cursory look to see if anybody else had hit the same issue and written a plugin for it, because the joy of Godot is being open source is that people can write extensions to the core engine potentially if they're willing to get that stuck in. I couldn't find what I was particularly looking for, but there was a lot of other stuff out there. People making all sorts of interesting things to work with Godot. How have you found it? Are you using? It sounds like you are wanting to write all of your own tools for your game. If you've come from raw Java, are you finding that you're using a lot of third-party tools or plugins?
It's funny you ask that, because actually my talk was about exactly that topic, about if you how do you decide if you should use an add-on or not for your project. And I think for my game, I'm already using around 7 different third-party add-ons in total. They sum up over time, right? Over time, you need a new add-on. So, for example, I'm using one for the debug console So I can hit
Yeah.
what is it, tab, I think, in my game, and then a debug console opens, and I can define my own commands to spawn items and things like that. Fairly standard. And also for things like fmod. So I integrate my game with fmod. The game Celeste, some of you might know it. They use also fmod, and that actually inspired me to use fmod for my game as well, because it's actually quite nice. And yeah, it's event based, and you have a lot of fancy features in there.
Yeah.
Check it out if you don't know it. And yeah, so I would say yes, I'm using quite a lot third party add-ons already.
Excellent. Do you think some of those are going to end up getting adopted into the core engine, or are they going to keep it as lean as possible, and devs are going to have to find their own add-ons and therefore just have the ones that they need?
So it's an interesting one, right? Because that decision, if something gets integrated into the core of Godot, it's a difficult one, right? Because it's open source, and if you integrate it, you cannot just rip it out again. So you need to support it.
Oh, that's true.
The philosophy of Godot actually is to add only functionality that benefits the most users. So
Right.
if there's something that adds a lot of value, but only to like 0.1% of users, it's most likely not making it into the engine. That being said, you can see a lot of add-ons, something like a 3D terrain editor, which is, I think, something almost every 3D artist who builds big worlds needs, right? But it's still not in core. And I think the reason for that is they want, or the Godot core team, they want to avoid a situation where you have like 5 different versions of it. So they'd rather add a terrain editor that is universally really, really good and so flexible that everyone can use it, rather than having something that's like half baked and not really good. So, and there's an add-on for it already, or there are multiple add-ons, and in the meantime, you can use those. But it's a tough call to just add it to the engine, because otherwise you get feature bloat.
Yeah. Which I guess that contributes to other engines taking a lot longer to boot up, because there's support for an awful lot of features that are not necessarily required. So, what else happened at the con? Just because in the context of Unity's recent changes, the main reason that I know a lot of devs were reluctant to use Godot is because of console support, which is obviously a bit tricky with an open source engine. Do you know what the current state of console support is for Godot?
So it is already possible, right, to port your game onto consoles. So on Nintendo Switch, on Xbox, on Steam Deck, you can already have your games running on there. But currently, you require to reach out to a third-party company who then do the port for you, because they actually own the license to do that. Because it's all about, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a technical limitation, right? But it's more a legal limitation.
Yeah.
And yeah, and quite recently, the Godot Foundation announced W4 Games, or a partnership with W4 Games, which is a new company founded actually by the creators of Godot, to actually provide a very almost self-serve style of publishing your games to the consoles. So the idea would be that you just go to a website, sign up, and you get access to the right repositories, and you can basically install something like a Xbox exporter template as an add-on into your game. But obviously, you need to sign a license and things like that, right?
Yeah. So
this is
sorry. So obviously, this is a workaround for the fact that Godot itself is fully open source, but the console APIs are proprietary and therefore can't be open sourced, because that would be a breach of contract. So only developers who have got an account with Microsoft, Nintendo, or Sony are allowed to use that API. So it's some additional legal hoops, as you say, rather than a technical issue.
Yes, I mean, obviously there are also technical issues, right? You need to actually build the integrations into the game
Oh,
engine, but I'm 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 quite confident in the technical ability of the core maintainers to implement that.
yeah. I mean, speaking of technical stuff, I mean, I know because you're this is a bit of an unfair question, possibly, because I know you're working on a 2D game. The 3D capabilities of Godot are coming on apace, and we're starting to see some really impressive renders coming out of the engine. Uh, do you know what the roadmap for that is? Because it's particularly interested. I'm particularly interested because we are starting to see Unreal starting to change some of the ways that rendering is done with their nanite technology, which also Alan Wake 2 is Remedy, isn't it? Remedy's proprietary engine has a very similar bit of tech in it, and it's an entirely different way of rendering scenes. So I'm interested if there's any plans to kind of push Godot in that direction.
Yes, totally. So at Godot actually, Clay John, the lead the lead from the render team of Godot, actually held a talk about the future of rendering
Mm.
in Godot, and he touched on some of these points. For example, a fully customizable render pipeline. So potentially even making render pipelines as add-ons. So you could have your own render pipeline complete replacement, drop-in replacement as your custom render pipeline, right? Another thing is obviously large worlds. So this is something the Godot team has on the roadmap, and that is basically supporting streaming of meshes, streaming of vertices, texture streaming,
Right.
and with that, after that, obviously, then comes also some culling system for vertices, right? Something like nanite.
Yeah.
But it's definitely on the roadmap. I think the number one priority at the moment is stability and quality.
Yes.
So this is something they want to focus on more,
That's
that
fair.
to have good performance that gets the most out of your system rather than a shiny new feature that is inefficient. Yeah.
Yes. No, that's fair enough. Um, uh, cool. So, what else? What else comes out of that con? Because it sounds like there's a huge amount of potential, obviously, and the fact that Godot is open source means that it can never be charged for, and in theory it can never be retired or go away. There will always be someone to pick it up, even if the 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 current team have to step away for whatever reason. Uh, is that a contributing factor to your decision to use the engine, or was it just the experience of using it that swayed you?
So I think the idea of having to pay for my hobby game dev uh, seemed ridiculous. So I was like, wait, I don't want to even pay an engine, or I don't want to even buy an engine just to work on a pixel art game. Like, to me, this idea is kind of ludicrous, ridiculous. I mean, so uh, it was definitely a factor.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the main factors were that a lot of devlog YouTubers that I watch actually use Godot,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay, why do they not use something else? And I watched their videos why they're using Godot, and all the design philosophies of the engine actually um, overlap with my idea of a good clean engine.
Yeah.
Less is more, so to speak. Which obviously is one way of doing it, right? I think every game engine in its way has its strengths and weaknesses,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just that the combination of strengths and weaknesses of Godot is something I can really agree with. So, yeah.
Cool. So coming back to your RPG, then, can you think of a couple of examples of something that was um, particularly challenging to implement, or something that was made extremely easy by the engine?
It's a good question. I think what blew me away was that I can quite easily with the tile map and auto tiling, I can quite easily generate a procedurally generated cave in like 50 lines of GD script. And it was something that in Java I could have never imagined. This being like just basically a method. And it worked out of the box with collisions and everything. That being said, I think something I'm still quite struggling with is getting really good 2D lighting in a way that it doesn't look jarring, in a way that it actually complements the pixel art rather than it being a separate thing. And yeah, this is something I'm still experimenting with. Just to give an example, what I mean with what a good marriage of lighting and pixel art is for example Sea of Stars, a beautiful pixel art game that launched this year. And the way they actually mix like 3D lighting with pixel art is, I think, one of the top three like pixel art games ever created, in my opinion, in terms of visual fidelity. And get there, this is very challenging. I think with any game engine, right? But this is something I'm currently struggling with.
I'm just having checking that out. Actually, that's a very attractive look on that.
Yes.
Big sprites and really lovely backgrounds. I'm not seeing a lot of tile repeats as well. It's very much built to look like everything's just hand painted, isn't it? So are you, with your art, are you using like normal maps on your sprites and tiles to approximate lighting, or is it just something that you're layering on over the top?
So I experimented around with normal mapping. So for people who are unfamiliar with it, it's basically describing from which direction the light should hit when and then it can make certain things of your sprites darker or lighter, so to speak. And I played around with it, but I always found it a bit like jarring, because you could see like, oh, this particular sprite is normal mapped, and then you need to have a normal map on everything or nothing. Right? Yeah, you can't just have it on like one object. And this is difficult, right, to make this decision. And I tried it, but I'm currently just using Sprite to hand pixel the level, and also to have some procedurally generated parts. But I'm still looking into ways. I'm currently trying to explore some alternative ways, like using voxel art and then using forced 2D perspective to make it look it's pixel art, to have basically the 3D lighting, but then having like 2D. Another way. Yeah, and another approach I'm currently looking into is actually using 3D models, but then again with 2D projected camera, and then you have the advantage of having 3D space, actual 3D space, where you can like fill caves with water, and having like you can have like fog and stuff like this. So, yeah.
Do you mean then quantizing the 3D image back into pixel art, or do you mean or still working with sprites? Because
both. So having like 3D models, but for example, the dynamic characters and monsters would still be sprites, but due to the forced 2D perspective, everything actually looks 2D, including the sprites. So you wouldn't really notice the 3D models when you look at the screen.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Obviously, the trick with mixing 3D and sprites is trying to get the 3D to have the right art style for the sprites, which is, I guess, a challenge that you have to work with the textures.
Yeah, exactly, and it's basically a trade-off, right? Is it worth all this extra process in your content pipeline just to get maybe slightly better lighting? You know?
Yeah, I suppose you could do like screen projection mapping of a sprite onto a 3D model,
Yes,
which is just
exactly.
it's just another way of getting effectively normal mapping on the sprite. But
yeah.
that's an interesting one. I don't have a lot of experience with 2D art styles, but I'm aware
Mm.
that there's a massive variety of different techniques to achieve what might seem to be similar results on to the untrained eye.
Yeah, especially I think in terms of lighting, what I really like about Sea of Stars is that the 2D lights actually have some depth to it. So if you move up the ladder, then the light doesn't it isn't just like put onto the screen, but it's actually impacting the 3D space.
Yes.
And it's just on another level. And to get this fidelity is kind of my dream, but I don't know if it's worth the effort, given how much work it is to set it up.
Yeah. Does that require a lot of changing all of the artwork to make it all consistent?
Yeah, and especially the process, right? You need to have like a consistent process that's reproducible and that you can reapply on all the levels and on all the different areas of your game.
That's a tall order. Okay, so how complete is it? Are you I've seen you share like lots of like screenshots of your work. So obviously, like you like features are going in pretty rapidly. Are you getting close to a playable alpha or beyond?
So I would say so. There are different aspects to this. So one aspect is I'm planning a complete vertical slice of a Steam demo that I want to put on Steam. That's going to encompass all the different gameplay mechanics that you can expect in the full version of the game. And that version is actually finished in my head. So in my head, I already have everything ready to go. So I know all the mechanics. I know how the levels will look like. The challenge is actually like extracting this out of my head onto the screen, into code, into models, into So, and this is the bit that's currently requires a lot of time, right, and effort, and I'm not there yet.
Are you working on
unfortunately.
this? You're not working full time on this, are you? This is
Nah,
evenings and weekends.
hobby.
That's a challenge. It's
Yes, it is. It
I
is.
find it very hard to work on stuff outside of work hours as well as doing a day job.
Yeah, it's challenging, but I think the idea resonates so well with me that that I just can't stop working on it. Basically, I just cannot stop thinking about it. Every single day I think about this game. So
that's fantastic. So, but I've noticed you have like a lot of followers on YouTube and social media, and you share a lot of your game dev process. So you're constantly like tweeting out like gifs of new features and so forth. Are you finding that you're building up a decent sized community who are keen to play it?
It's definitely exciting because when I started out with this, like actually making a YouTube channel and being a bit more public about it, I actually didn't assume that anybody would be even interested because I've been building games for like almost 15 years now. And in the past, let's say, in the past like 12 years before that, before I started YouTube, like I was just doing my stuff, and I would say not that people didn't care, right? But to be frank, I also didn't really do it that seriously in terms of having like one dedicated project or one specific niche. I was just like dabbling around with ideas, right?
Yeah.
And I would say in the past 3-4 years, I found huge inspiration from all these people reaching out to me, asking questions. I get a lot of questions of, hey, I just downloaded Godot last week, and I'm facing this problem, and yeah, directing them to the right forums and yeah, Discord servers. It's great. It's a great experience to have like a living and breathing community. I collaborate with. Yeah.
Do you think the fact that it's a Godot game has generated more interest than perhaps if it was using one of the more established engines?
Oh, I actually think, especially on YouTube, especially in the beginning, I was a bit envious of the devloggers who would use Unity because their videos generally have way more attention because people are like, oh, Unity,
Yeah.
I want to learn Unity, I want to become a game developer, so let's start with Unity because I think before even 2020, right, Unity was the de facto indie game engine. Like,
Yeah.
why would you use something else, right? It doesn't make sense. Why would you use something else? So, and I think just recently people moved slightly away from this idea of it being like the only true game engine for indie game devs. So I
Well,
think now Godot is gonna eat some of that market share, so to speak. Yeah.
I think that's true. I think to a certain, I mean, not to dunk on Unity, but I think like that the recent pricing issues were, I feel like, may have been like the straw that broke the camel's back, because there have been sort of like concerns about the like splitting the engine up into different render pipelines, creating like a lot more work for asset store people
Mm.
to support all of the different render pipelines that they were using, and the fact that Unreal is pushing the high end technology with Nanite and Lumen, and
Mm.
it doesn't appear that Unity has anything to compete with that yet. So I think we're starting to like see some stratification of engines where sort of like Unreal is clearly the choice for super high end photorealistic stuff.
Mm.
Unity, I think, still probably dominates the mobile market. But Godot could be there. Do you know? Have you tried? Have you done anything with Godot for mobile at all? Are there any
Mm.
plans for this game to be ported?
Not at all. The things I actually have some community members who sent me videos of them uh, playing my game via controller on their Android device by using I don't know, some other software to actually make it playable
Yeah,
on there. Because I'm not officially providing any Android APKs or
right.
anything, but it's still interesting to see that people actually use the controller to play that game on their little device.
Are they
Yeah,
emulating it, or have they like unpacked it and rebuilt it for Android? Because obviously
I actually don't
Godot
know.
does
I
support
have no
Android.
idea. I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know.
that would be an um, interesting thing to find out. It's amazing what uh, the community will do out there, because when you put something out there, there's so many people out there. There's people. There's always somebody who will become particularly obsessed with one particular thing and want to go, this game needs to be on my favorite platform, and
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
do whatever they can to make it happen.
Yeah.
So what's your roadmap for what is your RPG called, by the way?
Oh, so the name again is a bit, it's a bit complicated with the
Oh,
name
okay.
because when I started out with it, I called it Cave,
Oh, I
CAVE,
remember.
so Cave,
Yep.
um, which is it sticks with you. It's very small
Mhm.
um, and snappy. The name. Uh, the problem I have with this name is that it doesn't really resemble the like epicness of the story I want to tell with this
Right.
game, and it doesn't really sell the idea that it's actually an RPG about dwarves. It sounds more like, oh, it's like Minecraft but in 2D, which is
Yes.
it's not.
No.
It certainly has some elements from Minecraft, but those in the demo that I will actually put on Steam, those procedure generated elements will actually move more into the background. It will be actually more of a side
Right.
thing. It won't be the main thing of the game. So yeah.
So you working on you're still thinking about a new title?
Currently, yes, but for now it's called Cave. And probably the demo will be even called Cave, like the Cave demo. I don't know. Is it actually possible on Steam to change the title of your game, or is it like once you submit it, it must be that title?
It can be changed. I think it's a bit of a faff. I think you might have to ask someone at Valve to do it for you, possibly.
Okay.
Because I think they're reluctant to allow it because it's potentially open to abuse. And I think also possibly if you rename it, it might flush all of your reviews and possibly wish lists. I don't know.
Yes.
I read a horror story recently about somebody trying to like retitle their game and having a lot of issues with it.
Okay, yeah. I'm the thing is I cannot think of a better name, because any other name that kind of fits the narrative, I don't know, I thought of things like King of the Mountain, or Mountain King, or the Dwarven Anvil, but it's all like too long and it's so generic that it's like, oh well, I want to have it like a short, snappy name.
It is becoming a challenge to come up with original names that are distinct and are Googleable.
Yes.
Obviously, I like short, snappy names. Like Cave is a good one, but if you just search for Cave, you would need to add Cave Game to be able to narrow it down a bit.
Oh, and not even that, right? Because Cave Game, there are so many Cave games.
Yeah.
You need to like Cave Game, and it immediately becomes unsearchable. Yeah. So, and this is actually one of the main reasons why I'm hesitant to call it like this. But
yeah, it is a challenge. SEO is a real issue.
Yeah.
So okay, cool. So so I'm fascinated by you where the game's going, but dragging it back to the engine again. Do you have plans to take it to consoles once you're done with the PC version?
Yes, so it's actually an interesting one, because when I started out the prototype that you can currently play on itch.io, it's on bitbrain.itch.io/cave. On there you can actually play the current prototype, which is quite old. It's already 2 years old, but that one was made with PC first in mind. So you have this typical like item bar on the bottom that you might know from Minecraft. You can click on your back like in World of Warcraft and hover items with your mouse. And it's like purposefully designed for PC. However, I want to change it, so the actual demo that you will experience on Steam will be controller first. So this is like by design, I want to make it controller/mobile first. So the UI will look a lot more like in Dark Souls. And most of the menu interactions will be tweaked for controller or optimized for controller. And then mouse and keyboard will be an afterthought. So this was actually a decision I took last year to just to shift the focus away from it being a procedurally generated game and more towards a single player RPG that has Dark Souls combat, but in 2D. So yeah, it was a tough decision, but I think it's the right one.
It's a lot of work to change from like a pointer based interactions to gamepad navigation. How have you found working with input in Godot? Because obviously, like Unity famously is like works best using a third-party plugin to handle the input.
It's I think it's a breeze. It's so nice. It just works out of the box, and even out of the box, it comes with some default inputs that are already mapped to controller. And you can just take the controller and use even UI. Navigate buttons and navigate interfaces, and it just works out of the box, which is great. I customized it a bit to for example change the input icons dynamically if you connect a controller. So to swap between like and also like to swap the controls dynamically, and also like hide the cursor, for example, if you move you actually use your controller.
So full on live swapping
yeah.
between gamepad mode and mouse cursor mode. Yeah, that fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so much work. What about UI in general in Godot? Has that been painless or tricky?
So I think the biggest hurdle is learning it, because there are a lot of things, especially layouts, how to orient your components. It's mostly drag and drop, and a lot of like it reminds you a lot of like building a website in HTML. It's like you just put stuff together and it just works. The challenge comes of more advanced layouts that are responsive. For example, you want to dynamically make things change its layout depending on screen size in real time. And I would say once you know all the concepts, it's very easy, but getting there might require some learning.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Well, do you have any advice for developers who are maybe looking to make the switch from another engine to Godot?
So I think, well, the first advice is that Godot is not Unity. So by that I mean that it is not another game engine that tries to compete even with Unity, but it has its own quirks and its own philosophy, so to speak. And it can be sometimes very annoying, but also sometimes it's like so easy to use sometimes, and you sometimes think, okay, why don't the other engines do this, right? But then some of the more annoying things the other engines don't have. And again, like expect some friction in some areas, but also expect some almost surprises how easy it is to use in other areas that you might found very difficult in the past. And also, I would say be mindful of what you actually want to do. If you try to open the editor with no like goal in mind, it can be quite like directionless. So, for example, try maybe to port a smaller game you built for a game jam in Unity. Try to port it to Godot, for example, just to see how it feels. And this can give you already a good indication of its capabilities.
Fair. Yeah. Excellent. So you've already mentioned your itch.io page. Where can people find you online if they want to have a look at Cave or look at your YouTube tutorials and such like?
So you can find me on YouTube. Just search for BitBrain Dev. At basically youtube.com/@bitbraindev. I'm also on Twitter as BitBrain, and also on Mastodon, mastodon.gamedev.place, also found as BitBrain. BitBrain Dev, sorry, BitBrain Dev on Mastodon. Use Mastodon, it's amazing. Yeah. Yes, these are, I think, the primary ones. I do not have a like dedicated page for the game yet.
No.
I'm thinking about setting one up probably this year. Probably next year, 2024. I want to set up a thing with also press kits and stuff like this, because I think it's about time that I start thinking about that.
Yeah, the marketing is the other half of game development. It's it's a whole thing. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, Miggy. If anybody's interested in coming to chat about Godot and other game dev things, please pop along to gamedev.london, and where you can find links to our Discord, and there's a lot of chats going on in there about all things game dev related. Thanks very much for joining us.